Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome. Come on in. We're just gonna wait a few more minutes to allow everyone to settle in before we start. In the meantime, in the chat box, let us know where you're joining us from today. What industries do you represent? We are very excited to have you here today. I see a few more people joining, so we'll just wait a few more seconds. Heather's from Nonprofit. Hi, Lars from Germany. We have Robert from Apparel. Hi, guys. Amazing. Oh, Jennifer's from Beauty. Welcome. Firearms Accessories. Hello from New York. It's a good bunch of people today, a good mix. Another person from Apparel. Hi, Vera. Hello. Okay. Welcome, everyone. We're going to start now. I am Vi. I'll be your host today. I'm the e-commerce marketing expert at Omnisend. And today's topic has been one of the most requested ones at Omnisend and the most attended as well. And for a good reason, because you can have the most polished templates for your emails. You can have the savviest segmentations. But if they're not reaching your audience, we have a big, big problem. So today, we're going to be talking about deliverability. Try saying that 10 times faster. Deliverability. So we're going to talk about the common reasons your messages might not be reaching your audiences. And to help us with that, we have Desi, who is our deliverability team lead. She probably saved hundreds, if not thousands, of businesses from ending up in the void of emails and never been seen again. So Desi, would you like to say hello?
Hi everyone, nice to see you all here. And yeah, I'm happy to go through all the challenges you probably meet with your email strategy and save your emails from the spam folder and deliver them where they're supposed to be in the inbox of your recipients.
Amazing. I know this is going to be jam-packed with good tips and information, so take notes. And then in a couple of days, you will receive a video recording. Go through it again, share it with your team. And if you have any questions, our Omnisend support is always available for you. Before we start, a couple of things to know. So this webinar is being recorded. You will receive the recording in a couple of days. And then if you have any questions, at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A box where you can add any of your questions. So please use that instead of the chat. We'll be able to see it. And at the end of the session, we will have a Q&A time. There are a few questions from registration, but if you have any burning questions, just drop them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen.
So, as marketers, you probably already know how critical email is to your overall strategy. And the problem is that too often we assume that if an email is sent and delivered, the job is done. That's all. But unfortunately, it's not as simple as that. Today, we will uncover why that's not always the case and how to ensure that your messages will reach your customers' inboxes where they belong, of course. Here's the agenda for today. First, we'll go through the difference between delivery and deliverability. We will talk about the state of email deliverability in 2025 and what's new in the email landscape. We'll talk about how important getting permission to send is from your recipients. We will talk about how to keep your list clean and well maintained. We'll go through the red flags you need to be careful about in your email performance. And we will also talk about how to rehabilitate your domain in case you are experiencing some kind of issues. And we will also talk about what are the most sustainable email strategies. Of course, at the end, we'll have a Q&A session and we'll cover all of the questions you might have. So let's dive in. First, let's talk about delivery versus deliverability. The common misconception that I'm seeing a lot is that if my email was delivered, it must have landed in the inbox. Sadly, as I mentioned, that's not always the case. First, we have email delivery. This is the ability of an email to be accepted by the recipient server. You send a message, it is relayed through SMTP conversation, and then the recipient side will respond with 250 OK, we receive your email. However, what is happening with your message afterwards may be a bit different. So there comes the email deliverability. This is basically the ability of an email to land in the inbox instead of the spam folder. You actually have a few different scenarios. First is for the email to land in the inbox. Second one is for it to land in the spam folder. It can also be delivered to one of the additional tabs, promotion tabs, for example, or it can be quarantined in some forgotten folder somewhere, and nobody will be able to see it. The mailbox providers decide where to place your emails based on something we call sender reputation. There are maybe hundreds of different factors affecting the sender reputation, and that's including email authentication, domain reputation, technical configuration, your list quality, the IP reputation, your sending volumes. Very important recently is the recipient engagement, and many other factors that I will not list. But yeah, most of these hundreds of factors are not even visible for you as senders. They are happening inside an anti-spam algorithm or within in the personal mailbox of your recipients, and the providers do not share that feedback with the senders. We have some limited data like information about opens and clicks, but we do not get everything. And how the providers determine what has value, this is based on the positive and negative signals that they see within the data they receive from you, and it is based mainly on the user's reaction to your messages. And there are positive and negative signals, of course. So from the positive signals, we have opens and clicks that I mentioned are actually shared with the sender. So this is one of the data points senders can use to determine what their deliverability is looking like. But we also have replies. You don't see replies. This is also something that you see. What you don't see is, for example, the categorization. Actions like moving a message from the spam folder, for example, to the inbox, or from the promotion tab to the inbox, is a very strong signal that your recipients are giving to the mailbox provider that they want to receive mails from you, and that they see value in receiving messages and want to continue receiving them. Forwards are also a signal, a positive one, that you as a sender do not see, but the mailbox providers track and have a very a strong impact on your overall sender score or sender reputation. And then there are, of course, the negative signals. Marking as spam is one of the strongest one. Deleting an email without opening is also a very strong signal that unfortunately the senders do not see. And I recently read a report from one of the biggest mailbox providers in Germany that 90% of the emails they deliver in the boxes of their recipients are actually deleted without being opened. So they really rely on this data as well when they assign sender reputation to a particular domain. And of course, a very similar negative signal to the previous one is if the recipient creates filters to automatically delete or archive messages from particular senders or sender once they are received. Uh, and yeah, everything we will discuss today in this presentation will focus on improving exactly this, your email deliverability, and not just the email delivery of the messages you're sending. So let's continue with the state of deliverability in 2025.
Desi,
In,
I'll stop you for a second. I think your camera is off.
oh, let me see. Why is that?
We would love to see you.
Do you see me now? It's turned on for me. Just strange.
No. It's all good. You can carry on. We'll try to
Open on again.
resolve this.
Usually that works. Let's see. Hmm.
It's all
Okay.
good. We will try to resolve it.
Okay.
You can carry on then.
Okay, sorry about that, everyone.
It's all good. But we can see the slides and we can hear you okay. So it's all
Nice.
good.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. So continuing with the state of email deliverability in 2025. And of course, we will start with engagement based placement because yeah, you will hear me talk about engagement a lot today, so please bear with me, it's really important. If you take out just one thing out of this webinar, that should be how important engagement is for email deliverability. So yeah, email deliverability is constantly evolving. So in 2025, the mailbox providers are becoming more and more focused on how your users are interacting, engaging with your emails as a way to improve the experience of their own users. And that's the factor that has the biggest impact over the inbox placement. The algorithms are designed to observe the behavior of your audience and use this information to decide if this email should be placed in the inbox, if it should be placed in the promotion tab, or it should be placed in the spam folder. What does this mean? It means that the more recipients open and interact with your emails, the more messages will land in the inbox when you send your next campaign. And the opposite, the more people mark your emails as spam, the more likely it is for your next campaign to land in the spam folder for the majority of your audience. Uh, we are continuing with the increasing mailbox providers filtering sophistication. As we already mentioned, everything is evolving: email deliverability, anti-spam filtering, and the algorithms they are using. And thanks to AI enhancement, algorithms are better now at understanding and detecting low value or spammy content. So this means that overly generic or irrelevant emails are more likely to be deprioritized and sent to the spam folder. This means that your emails should always feel like they were written for your exact audience, like ev- your own the audience, the people who subscribe to your emails, and it should be very specific every time. Content that is not corresponding to your brand, to the URLs that are not corresponding to your domain, can be detected as suspicious, and there is a high chance for the email to land in the spam folder. And here, I would like to debunk a myth that is going on for years already, and that is that there are specific words that can trigger spam filters. In 2025, that is no longer the case. Like, you still need to be thoughtful about how you use spammy words in general, but not for the reasons that you might think. It's not really about spam filters punishing senders for using words like free or sale or promotion. If you check your inbox now or at any given moment, you will probably find a lot of examples in your inbox with these exact words. What matters now is how your users will react. What reaction will these words, these phrases will provoke in your recipients. If they like your content, you're good, basically. But if your subject line, for example, is too aggressive or too generic, or you're sending to people who are not expecting at all to hear from you, it will trigger spam complaints. That's the worst case scenario. It's better if they trigger unsubscribes, but yeah, spam complaints and any other negative reactions that will damage your future deliverability. So no, they are not specific words. There is no recommended ratio between image or text or anything like that. What matters the most is how your users will react and how happy they will be with your content, what value they will find in it. And if they are happy, you can use whatever words you want, even if they are spammy as hell, that's fine, it will still work. So the next major change in yeah, sorry, I went a bit ahead with the presentation. Um, the next major change that we observe is the increasing weight on the sending patterns. So what's the most important part here is that consistency is critical. Mailbox providers, they love consistency and they do not like at all any kinds of spikes. This means that if you suddenly send 10 times your normal volume, you can expect spam foldering for sure. Why is that? Because they will see unusual behavior coming out of this domain, and first thing the filters will detect is that this might be spam, or someone might be taking over your domain, or someone could have compromised your account. So for them, the safest approach will be to place these emails in the spam folder until they have more time to react and adjust their filters. So uh, if you can avoid any types of spikes in the volume in particular. And one additional tip I can give you here is that it's okay to even split your daily campaigns that you have planned in smaller lots and schedule them throughout different times in the day. You can, for example, you are planning to send to 15K subscribers today. You can send 5K in the morning, 5K around lunchtime, and 5K in the afternoon, for example, or something like that. It really depends on your own strategy and goals, but this will definitely help the mailbox providers react better towards the content you're sending and place it in the inbox rather in the spam folder. um, I've added Google and Yahoo sender requirements here just because it's still a hot topic in the industry, but I will not spend too much time on it because we already talked about it a lot during previous webinars. You can actually find and watch them if you want in our YouTube channel and knowledge base section. But what you need to remember here is that authentication is no longer optional. You must authenticate your domain with SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. And the other important part is that you always need to aim for below 0.3% spam rate. 0.1% is actually the recommended rate by Gmail and Yahoo, but the maximum allowed threshold is 0.3%. And while we are talking about spam rate, I also want to add something very important, and it is that Gmail doesn't share individual spam reports with the senders. What they shared is a spam rate report, and this is visible only in the Google Postmaster dashboard they provide. So if you are not registered there yet, I advise you to do that. You can go to Google Postmaster Tools, add your sending domain in there, and monitor how your domain is performing, if you have any spikes in the spam rate, if you have any authentication errors, etc. We also provide in-app integration with Google Postmaster Tools, so you can actually monitor everything in your Omnisend reporting page to avoid going to two different places. But it's really important to track this data as well, because if you rely only on the statistics you see in Omnisend reporting page, you will never see spam reports coming from Gmail. And that is how they operate in general. That is not isolated to Omnisend. It's just that Gmail never shares individual spam reports. So no matter which ESP you're using, you will never see spam complaints coming from Gmail recipients. What does that mean? If you are checking your campaign statistics and you see that you have spam rate of 0.1%, for example, you can assume that the rate is actually a bit higher if you include the audience you have um, with Gmail mailboxes. Okay. And last thing I want to mention here while we're talking about deliverability in 2025, that is the privacy regulations. We need to remember that subscribers are also changing, consumers are also changing their behavior, and these days they have way higher expectations, especially when we talk about privacy and data protection. One of the main changes is that tools like Apple and Gmail privacy protection make open rates unreliable anymore, or not that reliable. Let's say I would still go to the open rates to see how I'm doing, if I have good enough user engagement, but I will never focus on the exact numbers. What I'm also always looking at is trends over time. So having that in mind, we have probably see less opens because of these new privacy regulations. And on that front, we also need to be careful about new regulations or new requirements coming in the future. So try to stay informed, try to find a reliable information source, and check regularly for any updates. Something that is probably coming on the horizon is again related to Google and Yahoo's requirements and the DMARC policy in particular. Now, Gmail and Yahoo require policy of none as a minimum requirement, but there are a lot of discussions in the industry that this will so change, and they will enforce more strict policies such as quarantine or reject. My advice here will be for you to start reading on the subject and take an informative decision if you prefer your domain to be with a stronger, more secure policy. And my advice will be yes. If you need any help with that, you can always reach out to us. We will guide you and give you some tips on how to do that. And continuing with permission to send. Why permission matters for deliverability. So now that we know what's new already in the deliverability world, let's get back to the basics and talk about list collection practices. One thing you need to remember here is that permission is the foundation of email deliverability. Without it, you will very likely see higher complaints, lower user engagement, and there's also a chance for your domain to get blacklisted at, for example, spam house, which is the worst thing that can happen to you as a sender. And to avoid that, the only way is to actually get permission to send marketing emails to your subscribers so they can expect to receive content from you and do not mark you as spam or unsubscribe or ignore your content. There are two main ways to collect permissions. Uh, it's either through a single or double, or what we call confirmed opt-in method. While the single opt-in method is very popular in the e-commerce industry in general, I actually recommend using double opt-in as a best email practice. Double opt-in, it requires users to confirm their subscription by clicking on a specific link sent to their email address after they initially sign up for your newsletter or email program or whatever you are offering on your website. And only after this confirmation, they are added to the mailing list. The main difference between the two is that the single opt-in is of course quicker and can lead to larger list, but at the same time it hides also higher risk of invalid addresses or spam traps being added to your list. While with double opt-in, it ensures a much higher quality, and it protects you against spam traps and reduces risk of someone marking you as spam in general. Of course, choosing between the two depends on your specific goals and the importance of list quality. However, I really strongly suggest for to everyone to use double opt-in subscription method. One additional bonus for using that is you will also be protecting yourself and your brand from bot attacks, which is something that I'm seeing a lot happening these days. And yeah, no sender wants this to happen to their list. So double opt-in is a great method to protect your form and your website from such subscription attacks. Another very very important part here is to never ever ever use purchased, scraped, rented, or any other kind of third party list that can only damage your sender reputation. Nothing good will come out of this, like I can assure you. And of course, setting proper expectations during sign up is really important. It will be great if you can add one additional message informing the clients what type of emails they are subscribing for, what will be the message frequency, like how often they can expect emails coming from you. You can even add a preference center, especially if you are selling different kinds of products, and ask the clients what exact products or what content they are most interested in, so you can send them only this type of content. You can also have a preference center regarding the email frequency, like how often do you want to receive email from us. These are really small things that can make a huge change in your results and engagement overall. And yeah, I already covered that part, consent and preferences. And yeah, another thing that I did not add it here, but is very important, is to make sure you're always compliant with local regulations like GDPR, can spam, and yeah, different countries have different regulations, so you need to make sure you're compliant with all of them. And Now we will continue with the next important part, which is how to maintain your list in good health. Um, I added handling hard and soft bounces effectively here, but in reality, I do not want to spend too much time on this one because if you're an Omnisend customer, we are already taking care of that for you. We are automatically unsubscribing the hard bounces, which we are sure are invalid addresses and won't be able to receive emails from you. And regarding the soft bounces, we will be retrying to send them because usually these are due to temporary errors happening on the recipient side, and it doesn't mean that the next email you send to this specific recipient won't be successfully accepted. What I want to talk more about here, though, is segmentation and based on user engagement and re-engagement campaigns, like what is the best way to do them, how to do them most effectively. Sorry. um, you may hear from a lot of experts in the industry that it is crucial to send to your most engaged audience to keep good email deliverability. However, if you do that constantly, you're risking to achieve two things. First, to overwhelm your most engaged audience with too many emails. And the second thing is for the ones that are not engaged and you never send to them to basically forget about you. And this way, of course, you're losing revenue. So this is for me not a winning strategy. The best approach, in my opinion, will be to either mix engaged with unengaged contacts in each campaign, while you try to always keep the ratio in favor of the engaged audience. And the other possible way is to balance active and inactive contacts by using specific segments and frequencies. And here I want to give you an example that you can actually apply right away with your own audience. And that will be to separate your list in 4 different segments. So the first one, I will call it most active segment. It can contain the contacts who recently showed signs of engagement with clicks, maybe opens as well, if you prefer. Usually, I recommend to include contacts who demonstrated positive engagement in the last 3 months. That will be for the most active segment. So, most active segments, contacts who showed engagement in the last 3 months. If there are additional metrics, like, for example, web visits, purchases, account logins, um, or whatever you have as a data point that you can use that as well. It will be great. And what is specific for this segment is that it should receive every single campaign that you are planning in your schedule. So in the most active segment can receive every single campaign you are planning. Then the second one is the less active segment. Contacts who have demonstrated some positive signals of engagement in the last, I would suggest, maybe 3 to 9 months. And this segment should receive only every second email you have planned. And again, the positive signals can be everything you are tracking on your end. It can be opens, clicks, website visits, account logins, purchases, etc. Then we move on to the inactive segment. This will be the contacts who have demonstrated positive engagement signals in the last 9 months to 12 months, so up to 1 year. And you should send even less emails to this segment. For example, every fourth or fifth planned campaign that you have scheduled can receive can be sent to this segment. And then the last one will be the long-term inactive segment. These are the contacts who have not displayed any signs of engagement for a very long period of time. If we take my example, this will be more than a year. But again, a side note here, this will always depend on your business type and your customer life cycle. We cannot apply all these rules to every single brand or every single business. This really depends on how often you are sending, and how your audience react to what you're sending. But the examples I'm sharing now are valid, let's say, for most of the e-commerce brands I've worked with. So yeah, to get back to the long-term inactive segment, these are contacts who have not displayed interest in the last year. And in my opinion, this should be the segment you're using for a re-engagement campaign. And what I'm suggesting is a re-engagement workflow. It can be automated with 3 consecutive emails. First email will be, let's say, we have missed you. Here is, for example, 10% discount code. And you send that first email to this long-term inactive segment. Then, after 1 month, you can schedule a second email to be sent to this audience or to the people who have not reacted to the first email. And you can say something like, we noticed that you have not visited us or purchased from us. Would you mind completing this survey? So we can provide better service or something like that. The idea is to suggest a survey where the client can say how they can find more value in your product or service or brand or whatever. And 1 month after this email, so 2 months after the initial one, you can send a third email that is asking the clients to confirm if they still consent to receive emails from you. And if you have people who never react to the 2 previous emails and do not click on this link, these clients for me must be removed from your list. This is what we call sunset policy. We are sunsetting the people who are no longer interested in your email program. And that's a good thing. Like, I know that some marketers do not want to hear about removing subscribers from their list because this is an asset. But at the same time, if you keep such addresses for too long in your list, and if you are overwhelming them with emails that they do not want to receive, you're risking them to mark you as spam. And this will damage your sender reputation for sure. And we know already how important user engagement is for the inbox placement. That's basically the most important thing you need to think about. Yeah, and what else we have? Yeah, monitoring engagement trends. Um, as I mentioned, exact numbers are no longer as relevant as they were, talking about opens and clicks here, because on one hand you have Apple and Google privacy protection policies that do not display some opens and clicks, but on the other hand you have what we call bot opens and clicks, or not non-human interactions. These are the anti-spam filters and algorithms that are displaying the email, like reading the email and clicking on the links, scanning the messages before they decide if they want to place this message in the inbox or in the spam folder. And this will trigger an open or a click event for you as a sender, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the email is indeed opened or clicked. So you understand how opens and clicks are no longer what they were before. Like, you cannot trust the exact numbers you are seeing, but you can definitely trust trends over time. And that's very important. It's important to monitor how these metrics are going over time. And if you see a significant drop in open or click or whatever metric, then you need to investigate immediately what's going on. Okay, and now it comes the fun part, the red flags in email performances. I'll start, of course, with the high spam complaints rate. Spam complaints are basically a signal directly from your recipients telling, again, directly to the mailbox providers, that they don't want to receive emails from you anymore. And if enough recipients mark your emails as spam, it tells the mailbox providers that you are sending unwanted content. You have unclear or missing, for example, opt-in process on your website, or there is a poor user experience happening somewhere during the customer lifecycle. And all of these can heavily impact your deliverability and your inbox placement as a consequence. Um, you should aim to keep, like in the slides I provided, 0.1% as a recommendation. And again, I will mention that the maximum allowed threshold is 0.3%, but you need to stay below that at all times, because if you reach that, you're already in trouble. And yeah, I know it sounds tiny, but it's indeed what works. And if you want to maintain consistent inbox placement, you should aim for that number. Next one is low open rates. Here I provided as an example below 10%, as I assume most of you are in the e-commerce business, and 10% is an extremely low open rate if you are in that industry. So even 50%, I would say, but the bare minimum for me is 10%. As I mentioned, it's open is not that reliable anymore, but it continues to be useful way to guess inbox placement. Um, if you see open rates trending downwards, or if they fall off a cliff, for example, very rapidly, you have to figure out if this is a deliverability issue, or it's simply a problem with segmentation or content. A great way to figure this out will be by comparing open rates across mailbox providers instead of just at the aggregate level. And here, I can advise you to go to our new reporting, go to the deliverability tab, scroll down to the bottom, and you will see a breakdown of your statistics per recipient destination. And this is something what I love about our new reporting. It's really great. It saves a lot of troubleshooting time, and you can easily spot in there if you have an issue with a specific provider. For example, if you see that your open rate with Yahoo, Microsoft, Comcast, for example, is above 30-40%, but with Gmail you are below 15%, for example, then you will know for sure that you have a problem with Gmail. Your sender score with Gmail is low, and you need to implement a strategy around that and focus on fixing your deliverability with Gmail in particular, instead of trying to guess what's happening. Is it my content? Is it my segment that's not performing very well? It's really easy to spot issues in there. Yeah, let's continue with the next one, and that's the high bounce rate. Um, as I mentioned earlier, there are two types of bounces: hard bounces that are permanent failures, like non existing email addresses, for example, and soft bounces. They There can be a lot of stuff going on there. For the sake of the red flags explanation, I will mention reputation based blocks, or authentication issues, for example. So if you have authentication issues, if you have problems with your domain reputation, you might experience soft bounces as well. What uh, does it mean when you have high bounces? First of all, poor list hygiene, especially if we're talking about hard bounces. They come often from sending to outdated or invalid addresses. So the more of these you send, the more harmful it becomes for your sender reputation over time. That's why it's really important, as I mentioned before, to maintain your list clean, to sunset inactive recipients, and to have good list collection practices in general. The lack of email authentication can be something that causes bounces these days. The good thing is that if you are with Omnisend, we enforce authenticating fully your domain. So we will not allow you to send if you are not correctly authenticated, or we will prompt you to choose a shared domain that we make sure is also fully authenticated. Although I do not recommend this at all, the best practice for best deliverability possible is to have your own sending domain that is fully authenticated and is following best practices. And I mentioned reputation based bounces. That started to happen a lot after the Gmail and Yahoo requirements were enforced last year. We started seeing bounces coming from domains that are blocklisted at those destinations, and the error code that we receive, the error message says directly that due to high spam complaints or due to bad domain reputation of this domain, this message is being rejected. um, and here I would advise you to aim for not more than 2-3%, let's say, hard bounces happening for your audience, and soft bounces should not exceed 2% at all times. If you see a lot of delivery failures happening with your campaigns, I advise you to reach out to our support team or to your success manager, so we can investigate and see what is happening with your audience. Like, do you have reputation based issues? Do you have some kind of authentication issues, some technical error happening? Yeah, that will be very specific for the use case, but it's really important for you to reach out to us in time so we can troubleshoot and help you resolve the issue. Next one will be, of course, increasing unsubscribes. um, a spike in the unsubscribe is usually your audience way to say, this isn't working for me anymore, I don't want to receive this content no more. And it can be due to irrelevant content, for example, or um, overly ambitious, let's call them, sending frequencies, or sometimes unmet expectations for some of the recipients. And what we can do to fix that, first thing will be, of course, to keep their enthusiasm, to try to be genuinely helpful, to provide value with your content, to try to meet the expectations that you set upon subscription. And yeah, just make sure you're not sending overly generic content. It's something that is tailored to their exact needs. um, Another option will be, like if you see high unsubscribe rate, will be to maybe add a preference center to your subscription form. um, it can help reduce unsubscribes by letting users customize how often and what type of content they want to receive. You can even offer to your recipients the option to snooze emails from you for a certain period of time within the body of your email. Like you can add a link or a button, and you say, if you want to snooze your emails from us for 2 months, you can click here. And that can be very helpful for seasonal senders, for example, or if your products are not something that people purchase every month or every 3 months, for example. And you can segment this email to be sent to the people who recently purchased from you. Maybe they don't want to receive emails again for a certain period of time until they do not need to buy from you again after a certain period of time. It will be a matter of testing, and it will be different strategy for every kind of business depending on your customer life cycle. But still, it's something I would advise you to look into. Yeah, next to signals, of course, low revenue. If you see a drop in the revenue, my advice will be again to look into the content and what you're sending. Is this content bringing value? And you try to do something new to drive more sales. And signs of spam folder placement, that's um, a really interesting one. Um, what you need to keep in mind here is that people cannot open or mark your emails as spam if the emails are already sitting in the spam folder. So if you're constantly sitting at 0.00% spam rate, it's likely that this is a more of a bad sign than a good one, especially if your open rate is also low. If you notice such metrics, my recommendation will be to review again the open rates uh, per provider and look for clues into whether it's time to celebrate the low spam rate or to investigate more. If you have a spam foldering issue with specific provider, that will be very easy to spot in the breakdown in the reporting page. So let's continue now with.
Desi, I will jump in because we only have about 10 minutes left.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Maybe we can go through the main points that would be something actionable that we could all do today after the webinar to help with all the points.
Okay, so actionable. Let's start with domain authentication. Like first, do you have your own sending domain? Is it added to your Omnisend account? If not yet, I highly advise you to do that. Then, email authentication. Make sure you add SPF, DKIM, and DMARC to your sending domain, and look again at how you're collecting your consent. Think about going from single to double opt-in subscription method. And I would highly suggest to use segmentation to split your audience based on user engagement. The four segments I suggested above, highly active are like moderately active contacts, less active, and unengaged contacts, and schedule your campaigns based on the data you will receive from these segments. As I mentioned earlier, every single campaign can be sent to the segment with the highest engagement. Then every second campaign can be sent to the people who showed signs of engagement in the last 9 months or 6 months. Then every fifth campaign, for example, can be sent to the less engaged contacts, and the ones that are left with no engagement for more than a year, then you can start implementing this workflow I suggested for re-engaging the audience, and hopefully get back some of those unengaged recipients in your engaged segments, and sunset the ones that who are still not showing any signs of interest on their end. And the last thing will be to maintain constantly, of course, the results. Go to your Omnisend reporting page, look at the breakdown per destination, go to Google Postmaster Tools, register your domain in there, check after each campaign, or at least once per week, I would say. It really depends on how often you're sending, but let's say once per week or month, how your spam rate is looking, how your domain reputation is looking, and if you see some negative signals there, then you need to take some actions to rehabilitate your domain reputation. And I'll just list those here for you so you can see the steps. Uh, the most important part here will be, if you have issues that you identified, the best thing to do will be to pause all sendings for a certain amount of time, and to gradually ramp up the volume over time, the same way you're warming up a new domain. Start small from your most engaged audience, and then build up the volume over time until you reach the desired audience. That will be the best way to rehabilitate your domain reputation if you have issues with it. And for sustainable email strategy, it will cover basically everything we talked about so far, plus something very important: test your hypothesis. Always, like, A/B test everything you can think of, your subject lines, your contents, your segments, and use the strategy that works for you the best. Because in deliverability, the answer to all question is it depends. It really depends on your own needs and your business type. And we're done.
Amazing. Amazing.
Sorry
Thank
for
you
the
so much, Desi.
I know I
Seriously,
talk a lot. Yeah.
yeah, that was really great. That was really great. I do have one question that I'd like us to cover, and that's the one after this one. It's about a lot of customers at Omnisend. They have global businesses, and most either sell to US or Europe or both, and across the globe. So any final notes on how to approach this? Is there a difference when dealing with different audience in different geolocations? Where do you stand on that?
Um, main stand is that if you're following best practices, you should be fine in most of the cases. But to cover the main difference is that in Europe, there are way more smaller local providers, and each one of them have different, let's say, requirements or different limits in terms of how many emails they can accept per minute, or they have their own sending scores that they're assigning to a specific sender. For example, you as a sender can have very high results with the local German provider GMX, but another German provider that is web.de may assign a different reputation to you based on what they're seeing with their own audience. And this means that it might be a bit more complicated to troubleshoot issues, deliverability issues in Europe, just because they're way more smaller local providers with their own regulations. But to be honest, from what I'm observing, most people are sending anyway to Gmail, Hotmail, Microsoft, and these other big global destinations. that all have the same rules. So it will be rare when you have to troubleshoot an issue with specific smaller provider. And of course, there's difference in terms of regulations. For example, in Germany, it is mandatory to send only to uh, opt-in subscribers. I know that's a requirement everywhere, but in Germany, that's really enforced, and you can actually have problems or fines if you are sending to people who did not give explicit and provable consent to receive emails from you. And in the US, let's say it's a bit more different, because with canned spam, you can also send to people who showed legitimate interest to your emails, not necessarily explicit double opt-in consent like it is in Germany. So this would be the two main differences. Hope this answers
Amazing.
the question.
Well, the answer is always pay attention. Where are you sending the emails to? Always double check.
Yes.
Um, Fantastic. What I really liked when you were talking about everything is it's always coming back to knowing your customer. So even if like the spam filters and everything, know your customer, know your audience, know who you're talking to, and you're already halfway there. And also consistency.
Absolutely, yeah. It's really important.
Amazing. And I know that we all feel really rushed to, go all in and send out all the emails to everyone every day. But as Desi said, slow steps, just making sure there's consistency, you're getting that, and trust us, you'll get that with no issues, no troubles. And if anything, you can always contact our support team, who are always there to help you out. You will also be able to see Desi next month. I will not spoil this, but she's going to be back for one of our other webinars. And yeah, Desi, thank you so much for being here today and sharing everything. I'm sure this
Pleasure.
is just a drop of your knowledge.
Yeah, I can talk for hours, as you can see. Hope it wasn't too boring. And yeah, hopefully next time you will be actually able to see me with no
Yes.
camera issue. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one too.
Absolutely. We'll make sure we can see. If anything, we'll get a cardboard of you. I'll sit you next to me and we'll be here together. And again, reminder to everyone, you will receive a recording in a couple of days. So make sure to go through it again. Just take your time. Again, consistency. And if anything, contact our support team. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending, and have a lovely day. Bye.
Goodbye.